In this video, I'm going to talk all about Age of Sigmar Champions and why you should be playing it.
Okay.
Now here's the thing, full disclosure, I was not going to give this game a link of my time. I saw it coming, the preview for it, and I thought, interesting.
Not interested.
And then 2 weeks ago, I was at my local GW store, and the store manager, Matt, offered to give me a demo. I didn't have time that day, came home, and I told Jess about it. And she had told me that I should go get the demo, if nothing else, than to have a video to talk about and that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay. So full disclosure, I went in there with no expectation of enjoying this card game. But spoiler alert, I was actually blown away by it. In this video, we're going to talk about kind of the defining mechanics of it that set it apart from all the other kind of card games that I've played before. And I've played many, I'll go over them in a second. But it really does stand out in several ways and kind of define itself and allow me to do the kind of things that I love doing on a tabletop, just in a different format. If you are at all interested in this, I do recommend you go check out the Age of Sigmar Champions YouTube channel. They have a series, I think it's like 8 videos up there total. I think 4 of them are tutorials that are incredibly in-depth. Production value is out the nose, and they go through step by step and show you how to play the game. Now, I will tell you that the quick rules in here, it's a bit wordy. There's a lot to it. But when you actually see it being played by these guys, it's very simple, very intuitive, and frankly a lot of fun. Very simply put, you're going to pick 4 champions. They give you 4 in the starter sets, but you can always collect more from the packs and things like that. And with these champions, you are trying to summon units to battle, cast spells, things like that, all in an effort to get your opponent's life points down to 0 and yours at least above 0. You got to have at least 1. Now, in this game, every hero can do a whole bunch of stuff, like super cool actions. So that if they're a wizard, they can cast spells. If they are a kind of normal army guy, they can summon units and things like that. What's cool about this is that you are rewarded for that. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. But if you do the kinds of things that your heroes like to do, they rotate throughout the game. And once they do a full rotation, you unlock sort of like a massive buff, a hero bonus, if you will. If you play War Machine Horde, it's almost like a feat, like a once per game mega ability that changes everything, and you have a possibility of 4 of those. And so my point being, you play the things you like to play, and you are absolutely rewarded for that. It somehow makes a card game extremely thematic. So you are rewarded for picking the heroes that you like to use and that you think look cool and are awesome, and doing the things that that hero wants to do, while of course getting your opponent's health down to 0 and keeping yours at least at 1. Now, as I said, the rule book is a little bit overwhelming, but there are a ton of resources to learn how to play very well. The first one I said is the YouTube channel. Go check that out first. In addition to that, in the app, which we will cover in depth here in just a second because it's a huge value aspect of this game, we'll talk about that. There is a tutorial series built into there as well. So for this review, we're going to talk about the defining elements of the game. I'm going to pan the camera down and we'll just kind of walk through what the game board looks like. There are at least 3 really, truly interesting defining aspects of this game I hope you give it a chance to listen to. In addition to that, we're going to talk about the app and the incredible value that's built into that. It's absolutely amazing that they came out at launch. And then we're going to wrap up kind of with some criticism, final thoughts, things like that I'd like to see, or questions that I have about the game's kind of development. So let's go ahead and turn the camera down and see what makes this game so unique. Okay, so we're down here at the game board talking about the things that make this game unique. Now, I've played many other games before. I've played Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Hearthstone, High Command, which is the War Machine Hordes variant of a card game, and all those things. And I'm going to talk about specifically what makes Champions stand out. Here's the thing. You get to play exactly who you want. So, for example, I have a few heroes here. I'm going to throw it down for you. When you're making your list, your deck, you get to choose the 4 heroes that are in it. They give you a starting 4 in every one of the starter decks here. And, for example, like in my pack that they give you in that things, they give you a starter deck and a random pack of cards. I got Gordrak, Fist of Gork, and I'll pull his picture up on the screen a little bit later. But basically what's going to happen is you pick the heroes that you choose. You pick the heroes that you want to use, And each one of them has basically a cost associated with it. This little random set of numbers going around here, that's your life points. And each one of them will either cost you some or give you some. So for example, my Bone Splitter Shaman has a -1, so I'm going to start, I believe it's at 30, and I'll go down to 29. But the 2 bosses give me 1, and Gordrak gives me 2. So that means I would have a net gain of 3. So I'd start off the game with 3 higher health than the base value. So you pick your heroes. The reason that this is super important is because I remember playing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all kinds of things, and I would see a card that I thought looked super awesome. Let's take Gordrak, for example, and I'll put him up here. There we go. Finally got it to focus. So you can see the cool art there. Well, I remember playing those games when I was younger, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, and thinking to myself, like, wow, here's a card that I think looks really cool. And then you'd learn as you're playing it, I never see my Charizard on the deck, or I never see whatever Pokemon card, Blue Eyes White Dragon, I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh card you want on the table because of the resources it took to get them out there. It wasn't enough to have a cool card, you had to have a deck that facilitated you getting that cool card on the table. The thing is about Champions, though, is if you have a character that you like, whether it's the Orc War Boss Gordrak, the Bone Splitters, you just get to choose the heroes that you like and play them. So you throw your champions down in their little respective spots. And here's what makes it cool. Instead of the game being about how do you get the cool cards on the table, it's about how can you play to the favor of those cool cards. For example, talking about, let's do something simple, the Orc War Boss here, okay? If you look in his top left corner, there's a little icon. My camera's being very fickle, so let's try to get this in here. That little icon right there tells you exactly what action you need to do to make your hero happy. For example, this is summoning a unit. So if I were to summon a unit of, we'll say, Brute Smashes, which is a great unit, just played him for the first time in AOS last night, had a great time. I satisfy what he wants to do and I turn him. Now, one thing I didn't do when I roll these cards out here is when you're setting up the table, underneath every champion is going to be a blessing. When you do all the things that your hero wants you to do and the card rotates to full, you unlock that blessing, and they're like huge game-changing things. So getting your blessings is actually a really big deal. But my point is that I played a Brute Smasher and satisfied what he wants to do. Next turn, he wants to summon something, but he wants to summon specifically an orc. For example, with the first one, he could summon anything. He could be a grot, doesn't matter. Second one, he wants to bring orcs into battle. The next one is he wants to throw an action out there and command his troops, and the last one is he wants to summon more stuff. Very thematic for Orc War Bosses who are all about yelling "wah" and getting more and more orcs into combat. This is the kind of stuff where it's like the actions depicted here are the way that you're getting the flavor for those units, and it's very, very interesting. Because if you look over here at the Bone Splitter Shaman, I'll move it up here just so we can see a little better. These two kitty corner ones is casting spells. This is important because spells tend to take a long time to go off, 2 to 3 turns to work. So he might be harder to get his whatever he wants to do on the table. I say qualifications, but really his requirements for turning. And so it's kind of this cool mix where you're not just playing the heroes you want to play, but you're rewarded for playing the way that they want to play. And that's something that I love seeing in Age of Sigmar proper, when heroes and these kind of powerhouse units, they're not just on the table, but they're doing the kinds of things that they would be doing in the lore, or you're rewarded for playing them in a kind of a lore-based way. It's the exact same thing here, and I think it's stunning. Now, the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to what makes this game unique is the lack of resource mechanics. Sort of. You do have resources, they're just not mana, or whatever the Pokemon power-up things were called, or sacrificing smaller monsters like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Your resource here is time and opportunity cost. Okay, I can't stress that enough, time and opportunity cost. You see, these heroes only rotate to the side when you do whatever they want you to do, right? For his was summoning, he brought in a unit, not summoning really, but brought on a unit of Orc or Brute Smashes. The thing is that the cards up here at the top, the units and the spells and all that kind of stuff like that, all the actions, they rotate every turn. So let's say first turn I did this exact same thing, put all my heroes out, he brought the Brute Smashes and did 2 damage because of the damage up here in the top left, I don't know if you can see that. But the next turn comes around, the first thing I do before I make an action is I rotate these, and you go from left to right and resolve the effects. So this Brute Smasher would do another 2 damage to you. And here's the thing. If I fill this row up and I have no room for things, I can't play any more units. For the Bone Splitter Shaman, if I have a spell here, I can't play any more spells. The reason this is important is because if you look at the Brute Smasher here, which I won't hold up the camera because it's having trouble focusing today, but he has 2 damage on turn 2, and the third turn that he's out, he does 0. That little X means 0. Now this is important because that means there's going to be a turn where he's doing nothing except taking up my space and preventing me from doing something later. In fact, there are several cards in this deck, or in, sorry, the game really in a general, because I know it's across all the different boards and factions and Grand Alliances, where they have a lot of time doing nothing. You look at something like the Orc Scrappers, who, when they're summoned, do nothing first turn, next turn they do 2 damage, next turn nothing, turn after that 2 damage. So it's off and on, it's very spotty how much damage they do over time, and your opponent really has to kind of think about that. Now, there are also cards like this, the Grot Slasher, which you 1, 1, and then 0, again taking up a lot of space, real estate, and not doing a whole lot with it. Now, here's the thing, it's really important to know, my favorites here, over here on the right is like a spell. If you were to play Arcane Bolt with your Bone Splitter Shaman, okay, this is a spell, non-wizards can't cast spells, makes pretty much sense like you would think from AOS. Arcane Bolt comes on the table and does nothing. Next turn it does nothing. Next turn it does 7 damage. Spells like this are like ticking time bombs. Your opponent has to scramble to get rid of them, and that's super interesting because for 2 turns this is doing nothing, right? The third turn it does some damage, but it's still just sitting here keeping you from doing more stuff. If you fill this row up with crap dudes like this, you run out of, they only have 4 slots. You run out of space very quickly, and so the game becomes opportunity cost versus just throwing the coolest things out there. Again, I've yet to see a card in the entire deck here that seems ridiculous on every single side. Most of them are like 2 to 3 damage max on a corner, and really what it comes down to is you're nickel and diming your opponent. Of course, different armies are going to have different abilities, but largely speaking, my point is there are always going to be turns where these cards are doing nothing or very little or are easy to remove, things like that. And so that makes it very interesting when you're talking about game mechanics, right? You always get to play the cards that you think look cool. I like brutes. I think they are legitimately super cool. The thing is, every time I play a brute, I cannot play something else in that space. You see what I'm saying? The opportunity cost is that it's there, it's stuck there for a number of turns until if my opponent destroys it, they can. But then it just gets in my way. There's at least 2 turns where it's just in my way. And one more thing on time and opportunity cost is the fact that when your turn starts, right? Let's all say that these were, I don't know, played last turn, okay? You go from left to right, you turn all of these, resolve their effects, so my opponent would take 3 damage. Not too bad. But then here's the thing, you get 2 actions. With those actions, you can play more cards, you can play more spells, or you can not do any plays and draw a card. What this means is the only time that you would normally draw a card, outside of any kind of special, nuanced things from one of these abilities or effects, the only time you draw cards is if you skip an action or an activation. And so, again, your time and opportunity cost is the action that I'm going to do. Is playing this Grot Slasher so vital to me that I would rather not draw a card? And so, again, there's this nice pull between the things that you want to do, and that is truly the internal balance of each deck, is simply saying, this action that I can do, is it worth it? Is it worth it compared to drawing a card to get something better? And then even if it's not, right, even if I don't need another card in my hand, is this better than something I might get later on, or a combination of cards I might get later on? What if I want to use this hero's ability, like Gordrak? Well, we'll get to this in a second. Gets more damage if there's a wizard in front of him. Some of these cards have special effects based on what's in front of them. Is that worth the opportunity? And I found that kind of pull between what I want to do on the tabletop now and what could be in my deck to be really, really interesting. Now, pulling away from the actual mechanics that make the game interesting, I want to talk about price point here, because it kind of fits into this very interesting space. Now, like as I said, I haven't played a lot of these card games in a very long time, so I went down to my local store. I went to a Target and a Fred Meyer, which is kind of like a local Pacific Northwest locally owned Walmart, basically a superstore. And I did a comparison between Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and Magic the Gathering, which are kind of all in that same sphere as far as a trading card game style of setup, and did some price comparisons. It's important to note that all of these different game companies put out different kinds of entry-level products, so there's no one-to-one comparison, but they're all kind of in that same ballpark that give it a good value. For example, this Pokemon trading card game deck comes with 60 cards and a few tokens and stuff like that. It's a theme deck just for kids. Again, I would say that the starter decks for AOS Champions are themed to their Grand Alliance, and there could be expanded with more themes in that, like Ironjaw decks or Bone Splitter decks or whatever. But this is a theme deck for this specific series here, and yeah, it comes in MSRP right here. Regular price is $12.99. And I compared to the AOS Champions of $15, and then also being the fact that most retailers offer a GW discount of like 15%-ish, puts it right in that exact same ballpark. Now, moving over to Yu-Gi-Oh!, I had trouble finding a good equivalent for Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. If you go to the store, there's a ton of those like tins where you can store cards, but they just come with packs in them. They don't really come with like, this is a starter deck. So in terms of like easy access, again, across two different stores, I feel like I should see if they had a big push for the starter decks. I feel like I would see them. I know from my past they used to have them, but I couldn't find one currently. That being said, I did find this online, where it comes with a pre-structured deck of 40 cards and 5 extra. So you have some few options built in there, and that one comes in at $17.99. Now, probably the closest analogy comes from the Magic the Gathering, the Planeswalker decks. These are entry-level, pre-made decks that come with a pack of cards. So you see here, comes with a 60-card deck, as well as one 2019 booster pack, as well as the strategy insert, learn to play, all kind of stuff like that. So this is probably the closest analogy. It comes in at $11 here. I think the regular retail price is just a smidge higher. I believe it's like $12.99, if not $15. So spot on the money in terms of the value that you get from this set compared to those kinds of things. I think it's pretty much in the same ballpark. It's a little hard to say. Like I said, the Pokemon one doesn't come with a pack of cards, but it's a themed pre-built deck, so that's great. A little bit cheaper. That makes sense. The Yu-Gi-Oh! One really had a tough time finding in a store a good comparison, but online I found that one. Again, I don't know if that's full of usable cards right now in a tournament scene, so that one's a little iffy, but it came in roughly about that price point. And then Magic the Gathering had the closest analogy, if you will, and it was right at that same, maybe like $2 more for the AOS starter set. Maybe actually probably dead on the money depending on a discount that you can get for having GW products, but I think when you put them all together, variables kind of considered, they really are in that perfect price point when it comes to what you get to start playing. Now, here's where things get different. It's easy to say, oh, Games Workshop made a card game that was maybe like $1 or $2 over the price of the competition, but what you get for that $1 or $2 is actually quite fascinating, because here's the thing. You get a free app that is designed by them, and we're going to dive to that in just a second because it is a huge factor in the price point value for this game. In addition to that, you get a pack of unopened cards, as well as possibly an AR interface. I saw some things online early on that these cards are going to have some kind of AR component to them. You can look on your phone and see things. And I found those like way early on, and then no one's talked about it since. So I'm actually kind of curious as to how that's going to work. In addition to that, there is going to be online play, which, let me just say for the record, when online play is available, it's not quite yet, this game is going to explode, because I think it's a ton of fun. And so waiting for those things, what's going to happen is every single card you see here has a unique code on it, and then when you buy it in real life, you get to upload it, and it is permanently on your game account, and so you'll be able to build your deck and play and have those kinds of fun experiences online. So my point being, even though it might be $1 or $2 more, what you get for that in terms of support, applications, information is really quite valuable. So now we're going to head over and talk about the app. I'm going to head over to my phone. Basically, I did an on-screen recording, and I'll walk you through it. Alright, now we're diving into the review of the actual app itself, and this will be very, very quick, but it is a huge resource. So when you're buying into this game, it's important to keep in mind like the kind of resources available to you when you start playing. So you open the app up, it's completely free on iOS and Android, and the first thing you see is the big button in the bottom right that says play, coming soon. That's because online play is not yet enabled, but it will be soon, they say, and I'm very excited for that. But in the meantime, there are a lot of cool things about this app. One thing I had mentioned was that you'll be able to scan in your cards and have a digital copy as well as a physical one. And I also mentioned there's an AR component to the game that I didn't quite understand. Well, I understand it now. So go to scan cards. And it brings up your camera. You have to give it permission, of course. But look at that. That's so cool. So what this just did was it scanned in my card, assigned it to me. You can see the information there down below, owned by you. Of course, you can always declaim a card, I believe, by that little red minus sign there. And you can also set it at the bottom. You can see where it says auto claim and claiming all. This just means you can shut it up from scanning every single thing in sight if you don't want to accidentally scan someone else's. So now we have that card scanned. We can go back to our main page. And if you look at the bottom center, there's the home button. But to the left of that, the only unlocked thing on the bottom is our giant card library. Now here's the thing. This is why I say this app is such a huge value. If you are looking for a competitive card game, information is always going to be your best ally. And here, even though these cards are locked for the sake of playing with them and interacting with them, if you tap on them, you get to see them in full, beautiful colored detail. This means you have a repository of all information about the game. Everything that's available is available here for you to learn. And I can't stress enough how important I think that is, that the opportunity to learn the game and what other combinations are out there, or even for me, like I bought the Destruction starter deck. So I go to Destruction, and from here I can learn what other cards are out there for me to use. Of course, it even denotes if you have multiples, a little ×1 for the Frenzied Warboar. I can have multiples of those, and it's just a really neat thing. So if we want to find the cards that we just scanned in, of course we just did the Auric Scrappers, so we'll go filter by units, scroll down, and hey, there they are, Auric Scrappers. Now, additionally, if you look on the top right, you'll see that little lock symbol, lock and unlock. You can filter by cards that you simply have unlocked. Look here, there's a little exclamation point that's saying like, hey, this is new. So we're in it now, and there's the digital copy of our exact card. I love it. It's very cool. You can turn off the lock to look at all available Destruction cards. These are all units. Undo the unit filter, and boom, every Destruction card available to you. It's absolutely fascinating. I love just the sheer amount of information. And if you look at the filters up top, it's every kind of card and then every Grand Alliance, as well as unaligned ones, like Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield. Everyone has those. So the thing is, the interface here is extremely responsive. It loads up the images really, really quick. I love it. I'm not quite sure what the 3 symbols at the top are. They're on the top of every page. I don't know if that's like win, loss, draw, or what. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it'll make more sense when online play is access to us. So anyway, if you go to play videos, it's got some great demos. And this is basically the mobile version of their tutorials from the AOS Champions YouTube page. Very great introductions, like I said before, high quality made videos. Early access is something right now where it's just you send in your email if you want to get early information about stuff, and I haven't heard back yet. I just did it yesterday, so that doesn't surprise me. And yeah, right now the main functionality is of course the scanning cards and the tutorial, but when this is open to online play, this is going to be huge. Now, last thing at the top left, you can adjust your settings. Just so you know, when it comes stock, this thing plays all kinds of music and it'll have sound effects because you will be playing games on it, and that's kind of how they engage you audibly. So you have settings, written copies of the rules, a store finder built in, which is very cool, and the ability to link an account. Now, speaking briefly on accounts here, I know it's not like riveting stuff, but it is interesting that you make an account for this game. So if I were to own, say, an iPad, even though I'm playing on my Android right now, I could link the same account and have all my same cards on both devices. Additionally, if I go to scan cards, and I scan my buddy's card, right? Say my buddy, and I'll say this was his. It scans it. Look at that. That's kind of cool. I didn't even know I was going to do that. I dig it. Say this was my buddy's card, and I scanned it. It would pull up his account information down below, so we could become friends without having to go through the hassle of typing in each other's like usernames and stuff like that. So it's a really quick, easy way. If you're sitting down playing a game with someone and you're enjoying their company, you can just reach over, scan their card. You got their contact, and be able to message them through the app, and that's kind of cool that you can like connect so easily with people. I'm actually going to see what this does. Oh, wait, that is legit. Okay. I'm very easily impressed, but I love when interfaces are that effective. Let's go back here. And so that is really just about all there is for the actual app itself. However, the massive library dump of information you can get to be able to educate yourself on other decks as well as plan out your purchases is phenomenal. And eventually, like I said, the interface of being able to play online is going to be a game changer. Now, with talking about the value of it, what makes it unique, the application and support behind it, I want to talk about some kind of concerns and criticisms that I have. Not very strong ones here because it's such a new product, but things that kind of need to be addressed. The single biggest thing here is online play. I think the game is not going to take off in a way that it should until online play is enabled, until there's a reason, or not really a reason, but more of an incentive to go get this, because here's the thing, I can't always get to a game store. And when I'm at a game store, I want to play Age of Sigmar, like with miniatures, because I love it. But I will absolutely play the crap out of this when I'm not at a game store or can't, if I'm on my lunch break or if I'm doing anything else. And so it gives me that little fix that I need throughout the day. And so I think that's where this is really going to shine. I think it's going to be a huge incentive for people when they buy these cards to be able to play them outside of a tournament setting and just have fun learning the game. The fact that every card you buy can be uploaded and kind of made into a digital purchase as well adds to their value, but we're not experiencing that value yet until the online play is enabled. So I can't stress enough how important it is that they get that out. Now, of course, I want them to release it in a way that it works day one. I don't want there to be like huge critical failures or complaints, nothing like that. So I'm happy to wait, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to take off in the way that it warrants until that happens. Secondly, I'm kind of curious, and this isn't an issue now from what I understand, but how they're going to balance errata and FAQs. Nothing is broken right now. I mean, as far as I can tell, everyone's just playing with the starter decks, having a great time. Some players are learning the mechanics faster than others. Nothing seems broken or way out of whack, nothing like that, but no game is perfect, and all require kind of maintenance and tweaking. And so based on, because there is a physical aspect to this as well as a digital one, I'm kind of curious how they're going to do this. Would they change the text in the app for your digital play and then just kind of have a printed errata for what it should say on the card? I'm very, very curious as to how that's going to work because there is a physical and digital aspect to it. So it could be something like they make an update and so your digital version of your Orc Scrappers is changed, and then they just have a huge list of cards for event organizers to know, hey, just so you know, when someone shows up to your game store to play with an Orc Scrapper, keep in mind that this card is different than what it says. So I'm very curious, like I said, and that's not a problem right now. It's just one of those things that like you're thinking ahead to like issues that arrive in the future. Putting all my thoughts here into one little kind of succinct section. I had a blast with this game. I think it's a lot of fun. I like being able to choose the heroes that I want to use. It means that I get to play exactly the characters that I want to play, and I'm rewarded for playing them in a way that kind of personifies them, right? That makes them. Gorjek does big epic things, and that is big and epic of him. Orc war bosses want to rally troops and bring everyone to a fight, so they focus on bringing units onto the table. Really cool things are happening there. In addition to that, it gives me a chance to get my AOS fix without a 2 to 3 hour game and going out to a game store. I can sit at home and play with my friends and my viewers and those kinds of fun things kind of at my leisure. I get to play with cool characters with some beautiful artwork on these cards. I'll do some close-ups here throughout the video, but there really are some really gorgeous pieces of art from battle tomes and other things kind of injected into the game. The idea of making this an AR game, which people have talked about, but I have yet to see anything about it in terms of actual footage of it, is very fascinating because you're appealing to the younger generation who are just getting their first iPads or like that, and so you can do some cool stuff there. For what you get between this and the app, I think it's a great value, monetarily wise. I think it's going to spread the IP. intellectual property, being in that shelf section at Target or Fred Meyer or Walmart or wherever it is a huge deal. And I don't think someone's going to walk in, play this for like 2 months, and then go to GW and buy a $1,500 army for miniatures. But I do think it will invite them to play Shadespire or something like that. And just, the thing is that it's hard to compete with Magic the Gathering because so much of Magic is nostalgia. Right? People have been playing it forever. Now, here's the thing. I'm not under the delusion that some kid is going to play this for a week and then walk into GW and just randomly spend $1,500 on a Stormcast Eternal Army or Iron Jaws if they got the Destruction deck. Nothing like that. But I do think it does put a positive spin on their intellectual property, gets it out there, more visible. And here's the thing. I think it is a great entryway to, say, Warhammer Underworlds, whether it's Shadespire, Night Vault, whatever edition they're in the future. I think that's a great entry-level move from card game and miniatures to eventually miniature games. And in addition to that, it just kind of gets their, like I said, their intellectual property out there so that people start developing fond memories. It's really hard to compete with Magic because it has the nostalgia factor for so many folks. As far as like fond childhood memories, because we've all been playing Magic for forever. So getting those kind of ingrained things of like, this universe is a really cool one. There's a wide depth of lore, and it's something I can come back to and re-engage with later in life. I think we're seeing GW put a lot of those seeds out there when it comes to like planting things later on. You have the children's books, you have the horror stories for the folks who are getting a little bit older, you have card games, you have things like that where they're engaging with younger and younger audiences, trying to build those memories, because they're not necessarily selling to the audience now, but they're selling to them in 10 years after they're done with college and think, I have no hobbies because I haven't been trained to have a hobby in the last 4 years of college. And so they're planting those things, and I think it's a strong asset in that regard. For $15 for a starter set, and that's MSRP, that's not with a discount like that. Like if your store has a discount, it's probably cheaper than that. I think you really can't go wrong. It's a lot of support. Now, here's the thing. I think they made a great game. It's very fun. It's very engaging, beautiful looking, a lot of interfaces. I think what's going to happen is they have to strike while the iron's hot and get that online play enabled ASAP. Because when that happens, I really do think it's going to blow up in a big way. Now, the thing is how quickly can they get that out there, and how strong of a community can they build around that in terms of online play is kind of up to the future. But I think they have all the pieces. The making of something great is all there. It's just getting it all together. So friends, what do you think? Have you had a chance to try AOS Champions? And I just call it Champions for short. I like that a little bit more. Have you had a chance to try it? What'd you think? What would you like to see from it? Is there any mechanic that really stands out to you as being incredibly interesting or detrimental to it? I'd love to hear it in the comments down below. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.